This is the recording for assessment number 2 for CSIA 11, the IAD mock hearing. Myself, Shyra, Sagun, and Marcus Ortiz will be the co-counsels, and Huagu will be the appellant for the first part. Now we are going to begin the first part with Marcus.
Thank you, member. Philip, for the record, can you state again your full name and nationality?
Yes, my full name is Philip Torres. I'm Brazilian.
And Philip, are you citizen or permanent resident of another country besides Brazil?
Not at the moment, but I used to be a Canadian permanent resident, and now I'm trying to get my status back.
Can you tell us when did you arrive in Canada?
I landed in Canada as a permanent resident on October the 22nd, 2013.
And can you tell us what happened with your permanent residency in Canada?
Well, I immigrated to Canada under the Federal Skilled Worker Stream in October 2013 and had been working and living in Canada until March 2015, when I had to return to Brazil to visit my ill grandmother, who raised me up as my de facto mother. Unfortunately, he passed away in February 2018. I was about to return to Canada with my daughter, Marcella, but I didn't have the money for the trip, and I had to wait until September 2019, when my condo in Canada was sold. To return to Canada, I applied for the travel document, but got refused. They told me that I lost my permanent resident status because I did not meet the residency obligation. I think this is so unfair to me because I shouldn't be punished for taking care of my family members when I had no other choices.
Can you state your personal circumstances in Canada?
Yeah, as I have been saying, I must take care of my grandmother back in Brazil. When I was told that she was sick, I asked for a leave for 3 months from my company in Canada, and the return ticket was bought. But I was not expecting that I would have to extend my leave for 2 more times until I lost the job. As the only available person in the family to take care of my grandmother and my daughter, I have to take the responsibility. This will negatively impact my Canadian permanent resident status. For your information, my parents died in a car accident when I was 12, and my grandmother took me and my 2 sisters to live with her and brought us up. She has been our de facto mother for years. My 2 sisters are now in Europe with their own families, and they both have young kids to take care of, which makes them unavailable to be back to Brazil to take care of my grandmother. After I returned from Canada to Brazil in March 2015, my days have been filled up like a personal support worker, not just for my grandmother, but also my daughter. They are the most important people to me in this world, as my wife also passed away from a car accident in June 2012. During these years, I have tried a couple of times to hire someone to share my heavy responsibility and workload, but unsuccessful, because both my grandmother and my daughter were not willing to take me for everything. For this reason, I have to stay in Brazil from March 2015 to September 2019 without having a chance to return to Canada. And this is my personal circumstances that led to the loss of my Canadian permanent resident status.
Can you be more specific about what are the efforts that you and your family made to look for someone else to take care of your grandmother?
Well, I spoke with the other members of the family to check and see if they will be able to provide any assistance in looking after our grandmother. Unfortunately, most of them live somewhere far away, or they have other family responsibilities going on, so none of them is available. And we also tried looking for medical care, but since I'm the only family member who can be present for my grandmother, and the fact that I do not have a job in Brazil, getting a professional care will be too much for my finances, and I just couldn't afford it. And also, as I have mentioned, my grandmother and my daughter, they're not willing to accept the new one.
Thank you, Philip. That's gonna be all for my questionings. My co-consul Shyra will also prepare some questions for you.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. Philip, what did you do after coming into Canada?
I was hired by Nikon Technologies Ottawa as an IT specialist in their Toronto branch.
Okay, where did you work and what did you do at your workplace?
My office was in Toronto, and I was responsible for cybersecurity and internal technology updates and administration.
How well do you think you integrated yourself with the Canadian society while you were in the country? Were you able to make like connect with friends, romantic relationships, like community, church, or sports like that?
Yeah, like most of the people, I had a very normal life when I was in Canada. I worked from Monday to Friday, hung out with friends during the evenings and weekends, hiking, camping, etc. I had a girlfriend, Rosemary, in Toronto from 2014 to 2016. She left me for someone else when I was in Brazil. We had a condo in Toronto, but we sold it in 2019 when Rosemary failed to pay me off and I needed money to return to Canada urgently. Move out my personal belongings from the condo and store in his garage. Javier and I love baseball and we are super fans of the Toronto Blue Jays.
How safe do you feel in Brazil?
Compared with Canada, Brazil is less safe in terms of social security, medical service, and child education. Gangsters are everywhere in the country, and you can see news about gunfights, robbery, and looting on TV every day. Girls have to go out accompanied by male adults in the evenings, and some of them do not have the opportunities to go to school.
When your grandmother passed away, were you able to get a chance to look or find a suitable job in Brazil?
No, to be honest, my daughter Marcella has been very upset since my grandmother passed away. She locked herself in my grandmother's room, crying and refusing to talk to anyone for like 2 weeks. She told me she felt like being abandoned by the family, with her mom die when she was 4, and now my grandmother, who has actually been her de facto mother. She mentioned that her cousin are all the lucky ones because they have parents around them, while she was the only one that left alone. She even took the responsibility and felt guilty for the death of her mom and my grandmother, as like she was a hoodoo. I'm so worried about her situation, so I have to stay with her 24 hours a day during those times. Oh, and thanks God, she's much better now. I mean, I just have no motivation and time to find a job in Brazil, and I know this is not a place for us. To me, Sao Paulo is a city that witnessed my pain and the loss of my loved ones. I just don't want to stay here anymore, and I'm sure so does Marcella, my dear daughter. We're going back to Toronto.
Can you tell us more briefly, and this might be a personal question for you, but if you don't mind describing how did you cope with your daughter's state of mind? Were you able to consult a psychiatrist? Like, is she seeing somebody as of the moment?
Yeah, I have to consult with a psychologist who is a family's friend. He suggested me that my daughter and I should change our environment completely as soon as possible, especially for my daughter since she's more fragile at this age and sensitive after all the losses we had. And my friend, I mean the psychologist, he stated that it would be very helpful if we are able to move to Canada, since I already have a network of friends who can help us with the transition over there.
Assessing your personal situation right now, do you have any specific future plans for yourself and for your daughter if you are allowed to return back to Canada?
Actually, I have reconnected with my previous employer, and they are happy to get me in again when I'm available. Although this is just an oral offer communication, which is not secure yet, and I'm optimistic that I'll be able to find an IT job in my field based on my work experience and education. Of course, my daughter Marcella will stay with me, and I have asked my friend in Toronto, Javier, as I mentioned, he is going to look for a school with a good ESL program for us, so Marcella can be supported by the community and at the same time improve her English. We just can't wait to leave Brazil. This is a heartbreaking place for us, and we hope to start our new life in Canada.
What would you do if, in the event that you're unfortunately not allowed to return back to Canada?
Well, I certainly am not sure what to do if I can return to Canada, since I have a lot of trouble coping with finding a suitable job, as well as a decent school for my daughter here in Brazil. Well, if I'm not able to return to Canada, most likely I would have to contact one of my sisters, maybe to relocate to Portugal or England.
This is the end of our part one recording. Now, Hua will do part two, where the counsel for the client will make submissions to the member.
Thank you, member. From the examinations we have had and all the evidence provided, it's clear that my client, Philip Torres, is a single parent who has no one else but his daughter, Marcella, to live as a family. They deserve a better life in Canada as permanent residents based on the below considerations. First of all, not meeting the residence obligation is not the appellant's intention, and he has no control in a planned return to Canada over the past 5 years due to his grandmother's sickness and death. Please be noted here that Philip's grandmother was actually the de facto mother for both Philip and his daughter Marcella. Removing his permanent residence status for not meeting the residency obligation, regardless of the cause and the fact, is unfair given his circumstances and should follow the humanitarian nature of Canada. Successful in working in a high-demand IT industry, and his employer, a world-famous company, was willing to extend his leave for 3 times in a total of 9 months, which reflected that he's a good fit for his position. And they're also offering a job when he's back. Although unfortunately, the employer had to terminate the contract because of the unavailability of my client, his manager has shown great recognition of his work. So as per Section 3 of ERPA, the first objectives of Canadian immigration is to permit Canada to pursue the maximum social, cultural, and economic benefits of immigration. My client, Philip Torres, has been and will be an ideal individual to meet the needs of this objective. Thirdly, after leaving Brazil in 2013 and starting living in Canada, my client, Philip Torres, has been disconnected from the Brazilian job market. Since he returned to Brazil in 2015, he has devoted all his time, savings, and efforts in taking care of his grandmother and his daughter without having a chance to plan for the future. His ties to Brazil are very limited, as his parents, wife, grandmothers all passed away, while his sisters have moved to Portugal and UK respectively. Moving back to Canada with his daughter, Marcella, is the only doable option at this moment when considering the best interest of the child. Fourth, now allow me to provide you with the perspective of the appellant's 11-year-old daughter, Marcella. Marcella lost her mother when she was 4, and her father left her for Canada the next year when she was 5. She has been living with her father's grandma until she passed away. She lost her biological and her de facto mother consecutively in the past 10 years, while her immigration to Canada was negatively impacted because of the de facto mother's unexpected death. Even though Marcella does not have a good life there, and her emotion is not stable due to the changes of her life, and as her puberty is about to arrive, It is the most sensitive period in a girl's life, and Marcella deserves a brand new environment to restart with her father in Canada. As suggested by an expert witness, a psychologist, this change of environment. According to IRPA Section 28 2C, a determination by an officer that humanitarian and compassionate considerations relating to a permanent resident, taking into account the best interests of a child directly affected by the determination, justify the retention of permanent resident status overcomes any breaches of the residence obligation prior to the GCMS Note 2 indicated that the visa officer said, no HNC consideration was requested by my client, and this was incorrect. A detailed letter requesting HNC grants that came as an attachment of IMM 5524 was submitted when my client applied for the travel document to return to Canada as soon as he can afford the cost. In sum, on behalf of Mr. Philip Torres, I kindly request you, the member, to consider all the oral and written evidence and approve this appeal so my client, Mr. Philip Torres, can keep his Canadian permanent resident status so he can restart with his daughter in Canada and apply his IT talent to the Canadian industry. Thank you.